Uncovered secrets of my uncle's sinister cabin in British Columbia, 7 cursed rules exposed. Sarah stood at the edge of the darkened forest, her heartbeat syncing with the frantic rhythm of her thoughts. The letter had been straightforward, laced with an anxiety-inducing promise: come to Uncle Joe's cabin for the weekend. But family whispers about his strange rules, tales of spirits trapped within the trees, spun a frigid dread through her veins. Even worse was the cover-up: the 7 rules etched in riddles only to ensnare those who dared trespass the cabin's limits. The car ride out had felt endless, city lights dimming in her rearview mirror until they were just a memory. Now, standing before the rickety cabin, the weight of anticipation pressed against her chest. This place, hidden deep in the uncharted wilderness of British Columbia, wrapped itself in an unsettling silence that was magnetic yet foreboding. Towering trees loomed around her like spectators to her growing fears, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes as dusk approached. Pushing the creaking door open, a rush of dust and stale air engulfed her. The smell of mold and damp would caress her senses, evoking an urge to flee. The cabin appeared stuck in time, walls adorned with rusted trinkets and faded photographs that felt like ghostly eyes watching her every move. The notes scattered across the worn-down table told stories of loss, urging her to heed Uncle Joe's infamous rules. Never wander into the woods after dark, the first rule warned. Sending a chill racing down her spine, she shivered, trying to shake off the growing unease when a sudden snap outside broke the silence. It felt as if the forest exhaled, whispering secrets that should remain unspoken. Sarah's pulse quickened. The notion that her family history, filled with eccentricities and terrifying folklore, could come alive here clawed at her sanity. What would happen if she broke a rule? Settling into a chair that groaned under her weight, she tried to distract herself with Uncle Joe's notes, diving deeper into the terrifying folklore he had penned. Stories of people who had disappeared under the trees danced in her mind, infecting her thoughts with dread. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone only to find a single bar of signal and nothing else. Panic squeezed her heart. She was truly alone. Suddenly, a rustle shook the air, followed by a low whisper that seemed to drift through the window. "You should have never come back," it taunted, sending a jolt through her body. The cold brush of fear wrapped itself around her, blurring the line between reality and the terrifying fables Joe had left behind. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Heart pounding, Sarah bolted toward the door, momentarily feeling a flicker of hope as she contemplated her escape. But the door wouldn't budge. Frantic, she yanked at the knob again, her breath coming fast. Outside, the darkness thickened, swallowing every inch of light. Shadows twisted and danced, and memories of childhood tales echoed ominously in her mind. She stepped back, her instincts shouting that whatever lurked outside was far worse than mere folklore. Something was alive and watching. The embers of a recently lit campfire flickered faintly in the distance, glowing like a beacon in the enveloping darkness. Then, just as she hesitated, a figure dashed across the trees, fueling her panic and leading her to a dreadful realization. She was not alone and the cabin's rules were far from just superstitions. Panic surged through Sarah like icy water pouring over her skin. The figure she had glimpsed darted deeper into the trees, its movements suspiciously abrupt and unnatural. As she leaned closer to the window, her heart drumming in her chest, she peered into the suffocating blackness outside. The embers from the campfire sputtered like dying stars, illuminating nothing. "Hello?" she called, her voice a mere whisper swallowed by the night. Why had she bothered? There would be no answer, not here. Her throat tightened as shadows twisted and creaked, every rustle sounding like the echoes of whispering ghosts. With each moment, the reality of being trapped sank deeper into her bones. Uncle Joe's warning flooded her thoughts. Breaking the rules felt like an invitation to doom. Might as well get comfortable, she muttered, forcing a hollow laugh. She stumbled back from the door, her pulse quickening at the sound of another snap outside, closer this time. Sweat trickled down her spine. It wasn't just her imagination. Something was hiding in the wet earth, something hungry and waiting. Then the whispers started again, barely audible, but this time they were different. They carried a tone of urgency. "Come join us," the chilling voices beckoned, and her breath hitched in response. She pressed her back against the wall, clawing at her shirt as a new memory seared into her mind. Her cousin, lost in these woods years ago, a dark tale that was rarely told. Had they ever found him? Or had he become one with the trees? She trembled as the thought flared, a vivid picture of him, hollow-eyed and lost, trapped in a twisted branch, crying out to anyone who would listen. Suddenly, a bang echoed from the door, stronger, more forceful, rattling the rickety frame. "Let me out. Please!" She screamed, but even as the words filled the air, she felt a terrifying silence press against her ears. The only response was an oppressive weight bearing down on her heart. That in a wild rush, she turned, searching for anything that could serve as a weapon. A rusted iron poker, she grabbed it tight, its cold metal grounding her swirling thoughts. Adrenaline surged through her veins. If something was coming for her, she wouldn't go down without a fight. As she steeled herself, another shadow flitted past the window, larger this time. Her breath caught as wide, iridescent eyes reflected the fading light. It stood motionless, but Sarah could feel its intent, could sense the danger twisting like a serpent around her. There was something behind those eyes, a history of suffering lay etched deep within them. "Dare to break the seventh rule, and your fate will be forever woven into the woods." Yet another voice whispered, taunted, chiming in the symphony of threatening words. "Forget the rules. I want to be a part of this," Sarah shouted, smashing the poker against the wall. Her voice echoed defiantly through the cabin even as her legs trembled lightly. But as the woods conspired against her, another sound pierced the ambient night, the rustle of leaves shifting, approaching. Then a crash echoed from the forest canopy, as if something enormous was moving closer, wrestling through the underbrush. Drawn by her rebellion, gasping, she turned back to the door, desperate to escape. With one swift motion, she yanked the door open, adrenaline fueling her leap into the night. The dark woods awaited her like an open maw. Heart pounding, she sprinted, the air biting at her skin, but insanity gripping her mind pulled her deeper into the forest. Then she heard it, a shrill laughter ringing through the trees, echoing her name, twisting into something eerie that stopped her in her tracks. It was more than human, blurring the line between a haunting call and a cruel taunt. "Come join us," Sarah, with breathless terror anchoring her feet, she shivered, realizing she had not turned back yet. As her resolve faltered, she faced an unfathomable choice: run deeper into the dark or return to the cabin that promised secrets she might not survive. But how long could she last on the edge between fear and survival? The forest loomed dark and sinister, its twisted branches stretching like skeletal fingers toward the sky. Sarah's legs quaked, but she forced herself to move, sprinting through the brush, the undergrowth grabbing at her pants and shoes like greedy hands. Each footfall echoed in her ears, a reminder that something was behind her, something that whispered and laughed in the dark. Sarah, the laughter curled around her, wrapping tight around her chest. Panic surged again as she clapped her hands over her ears. The cabin, with all its secrets, was behind her now, but the woods felt alive, giggling and whispering, alive with memories and longing. Branches cracked, snapping with an alarming vigor, and she turned abruptly to search the shadows. There it was again, that glimmer of eyes watching her. Wide, unblinking, full of hunger. The imagery of her cousin floated through her mind, now more solid than ever. Had he known this fear? Had he heard those whispers, too? "Don't look back," she admonished herself, as if sheer will could push the dread away, yet every instinct screamed for her to run deeper into the forest. The laughter swelled around her, stronger now and mocking, dancing like a flame just beyond her grasp. She surged forward, stumbling onto a narrow path carved through the thick trees. A part of her wondered if she should turn around, to face whatever the cabin hid, but the memory of the dark laughter and shadowy eyes chased that notion away. her breath came quickly, jagged gasps punctuating the stillness, each exhale mingling with the distant rustling from the treetops. Was the wind swirling with malevolence, or was it the forest itself, conspiring against her? She could feel the weight of those trees pressing in around her, their shadows creeping closer. Somewhere not too far, voices mingled. "Bring her to us, the seventh rule she must pay," echoed on the wind, chilling her skin. Each phrase felt like nails scraping against her brain. She was too close to whatever horror unfolded in these woods. She needed to find a way out, a place of safety, where the call of the forest couldn't reach her. Spotting a slight clearing bathed in moonlight, she darted toward it, longing for clarity among the trees, desperately hoping for a signal, a shred of hope. But as she stepped into the openness, a cold hand grasped at her heart. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood a figure cloaked in shadows, swaying slightly, almost as if it were beckoning her. Sarah, the voice dripped with honeyed malice, resonating in her bones and coaxing her forward against her instincts. In that moment, she was rooted to the spot. The figure turned, revealing a familiar face. The lost cousin she had thought of earlier, eyes sunken, hollow with ancient knowledge and grief. "We've been waiting for you, Sarah, you broke the rule." A shriek clawed at her throat, but all that escaped was a strangled cry. Fear propelled her, and she spun away, charging back past the tree line, the laughter following her like shadows flickering at the edge of her vision. The dense underbrush tore at her skin, thorns snagged her clothes. She couldn't look back, couldn't face the truth reflected in those haunting eyes. The path twisted violently, leading her deeper into darkness, each heartbeat drumming a rhythm of despair. Just when she thought she might escape, something crashed through the thicket, a low growl reverberating through the air like thunder. It was close, too close, and whatever it was hunting her now. "Join us, Sarah." The voices offered a cruel comfort, almost like a promise, wrapping around her heart. With dread gripping her, Sarah stumbled into another clearing, gasping as she turned to face her pursuer, but she was not prepared for what she saw. The darkness shifted, and the ground began to tremble beneath her feet. The trees seemed to twist and elongate, reaching towards her, as if they were sentient. The ground opened slightly, revealing a chasm that felt alive and breathing, a void ready to devour her whole. She had one choice: face the danger ahead or be consumed by the whispers of the cursed woods behind her. Which path led to survival? When had the rules become her own undoing? As she teetered on the edge of the void, heart hammering, she whispered a desperate prayer to escape the cycle of torment. The weight of the forest pressed down, whispering her name again. "Sarah, come join us." And as darkness closed in around her, she realized this fight had only just begun. The chasm roared beneath her, an awakening beast, eager to consume anything that dared approach. Sarah's breath came in frantic bursts, throat constricted, heart like thunder in her ears. Shadows danced around her, twisting into shapes that were alive, mocking her with every flicker. Step closer, the whispers coiled around her, seductive and dark. "You seek the truth, don't you?" With each pulse of the earth, that elusive truth beckoned her, yet she felt the gravity of fear pulling her back. She knew better, there would be no truth without a price. But she couldn't allow the laughter to claim her. The choice loomed greater than the chasm beneath her, heavier than the forest pressing in. The laughter droned on, a chorus singing of despair. "You broke the rule," it continued, threaded with malice, jarring her. What rule? What price? In that moment, flashes of memories collided in her mind, fragments of her childhood, tales of the cabin and its terror that made her feel invincible as a child but now whispered of dire consequences. With trembling hands, she fought to reorient herself. She spotted a narrow path veering left, entwined with roots and cloaked in shadow. It felt like an invitation, a risky lifeline. No more thoughts of the familiar face. She had to escape, had to break free of this living nightmare. Yet as she bolted towards the path, a sudden burst of motion from the trees caught her eye. A low growl reverberated, rising in tempo like a heartbeat, matching her own. Moving shadows merged with the darkness, converging on her sanctuary. Fear clawed at her throat. It was decision time, life or death. "Leave her." A harsh voice snarled from the beyond, thick with dread and power. It was a command, an order that cut through the sinister laughter, but it did little to quell her fear. The unseen creature trod closer, breaking branches that screamed under the weight of its approach. As she stumbled deeper into the path, the soft, loamy ground suddenly gave way, and she slipped down a small incline, landing hard on her side. Pain shot through her, but she pushed it away, scrambling to her feet. Panic surged as she looked back. The clearing was lost behind a wall of shadows, laughter morphing into bellowing roars, closing in on her. And no longer able to hear the whispers from the cabin, Sarah grasped the last vestiges of her sanity. The feeling that she was being observed made her blood run cold. She could feel the eyes of something ancient sizing her up, waiting for her to falter, but then, a strange calm washed over her. Somehow, she remembered the stories of her cousin, how he too had wandered these woods once, but he had returned with knowledge that etched into his eyes the fear of the rules. The seventh rule, he had whispered once. It's always the hardest. What is the seventh rule? She shouted into the depths of the trees, her own voice echoing back to her, a question filled with desperation. For a moment, silence fell, thick and palpable. The shadows pulsed, and then you must become one of us. The laughter erupted around her, and the road behind her converged, sealing her in. It was the forest's final act, the reckoning of her choice. With sudden resolve, Sarah mustered everything she had. She spotted a narrow opening between two gnarled trees that appeared to lead deeper into the unknown and escape. She launched herself forward, adrenaline pooling in her veins and driving her forward. But the moment she entered that path, the ground beneath her began to tremble violently, the chasm roaring louder as if warning her to turn back. "Join us, Sarah!" The voices clamored. The night air grew heavy, spiked with an urgency that pulsed through her. She could feel it all turning towards her, every tree, every shadow, every fragment of the past. The path led her deeper into the heart of the woods, where whispers threatened to weave through her mind. And as she ran, she could barely grasp what truth awaited her, what awaited her just beyond those trees. What darkness had her family woven into this forest? In her desperate flight, she didn't know that. She was only steps away from the darkest truth of all. Panic coursed through Sarah's veins, an electric current urging her deeper into the forest's grasp. The gnarled branches clawed at her arms like fingers made of old bone, tearing at her determination. Every heartbeat echoed against the haunting incomplete laughter that followed her, a dissonant orchestra in the dark. The forest swallowed her whole as she plunged into an overwhelming void of shadows. It was a different kind of darkness, not just the absence of light, but a living entity that breathed and pulsed, intertwining with her very thoughts. "You're lost now," it seemed to chant. "No way back." She stumbled forward, breathless, demanding her body to move faster, to ignore the weight of despair thickening the air. Each step deeper into the forest felt like a step away from freedom, but she couldn't stop. The whispers taunted her, echoing her worst fears. "You were meant to belong, you cannot escape." Suddenly, the ground sloped again, pulling her toward a hidden recess. It was an old clearing, bathed in eerie silvery light. In the center stood a massive tree, its trunk wider than a car, twisted and ancient. Carvings marred its surface, symbols she recognized only from childhood nightmares, etched there in horrifying detail. 7 rules, she murmured, as if the tree could provide answers. What secrets lay entwined in its roots? The air buzzed around her, heavy with anticipation. As she edged closer, fear snatched at her throat. The laughter had died down, replaced by a discordant silence that pressed against her ears. But then, a soft rustle came from behind the tree, a presence lurking just out of sight. Was it her mind playing tricks, or was something waiting for her, eager to reveal the truth? Terrified, she broke the silence. "What do you want from me?" Her voice was a shaky whisper, as though speaking too loudly would shatter the fragile stillness around her, and then, it spoke. "The forest needs you, Sarah. It has chosen you to gather the truth. Become the vessel of understanding." The voice flowed like honey, smooth and enticing but with a sinister edge. "Join us, fulfill the legacy." Images flooded her mind, her childhood memories distorted. Laughter echoed not from despair but from a secret familiar to her family, a legacy of darkness they had kept hidden. Fear gripped her tight. The weight of unfulfilled expectations pressed down a burden so heavy that it made her knees tremble. "I want tea," she stammered, shaking her head. "I refuse. I don't belong here." Then the chasm awaits, the shadows warped, swirling around her like smoke. Every choice has a cost. Chilled by the realization, Sarah's heart thundered as she turned to flee once more. This time, though, the path seemed to shift, roots coiling underfoot and branches arching to block her way. The laughter returned, a cacophony that slithered through her like ice. She had to escape, but where to? The trees closed ranks, their bark glimmering ominously, as though they were creatures waiting to ensnare her. Panic surged again, each breath felt like a jigsaw piece, slipping into an impossible puzzle she could not solve. With one final push, she jumped to her right, where she thought there might be an opening, but instead, her foot landed on something slick and smooth, a stone, glistening under the moonlight. The ground trembled and let out a low growl, sending shock waves of terror rippling through her body. A rumble echoed from the chasm behind her as roots writhed, reacting to her fears as they urged her to step closer to the truth they promised. Sarah, something was awakening, something ancient and powerful that hungered for her choice. The ground trembled again, and with a dread-filled heart, she turned back to the clearing, her breath hitching in her throat as she realized she was not as alone as she thought. A figure cloaked in shadow moved toward her, and with a heart-stopping whisper, it uttered a single name: Sarah. What awaited her in the suffocating darkness? What awaited beyond the familiar face that turned toward her, grinning with an unsettling knowledge? The figure stepped into the silvery moonlight, and Sarah's heart dropped. It was her uncle, the one who had always spoken cryptically about the forest, a man changed by secrets too dark to mention. His grin widened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too gleaming against the night. "You found me," he said, his voice a chilling echo of her childhood. "What are you doing here? Why are you?" Her words caught in her throat as she took a tentative step backward, trying to draw distance from the lies she could almost taste in the air. "Oh, I've always been here, Sarah," he replied, a sickening glee bubbling in his tone. "You just never knew how to see me. This forest, it thrives on us, on our fears, our failures, our secrets." He gestured around them, and the shadows twisted with his movements as if listening. "It's a living thing, hungry for understanding, and you alone have the potential to feed it." Another figure emerged from behind the tree, cloaked in the same darkness. This one was an old woman, her skin wrinkled like dried bark, her eyes glittering with malice. "Welcome home, dear Sarah," she crooned, extending a claw-like hand toward her. "You were promised to us, long before you were born." "No. I don't. This isn't my home." Sarah stepped back, her breath quickening. Thorns from the gnarled roots seemed to cling to her shoes, keeping her rooted in place. Her uncle took a step closer, delighting in her fear. "But it is. Can't you see? The rules, the laughter, it's all for you. You have a choice to make." "What choice?" she demanded through clenched teeth. "What can any of you want from me?" Each word felt heavy, weighted with the enormity of her denial. "The forest offers power. Knowledge too. All you must do is embrace your lineage, your birthright." He took another step forward. "Join us. Accept your role, and gain what we have lost." The old woman chuckled softly, sending shivers racing down Sarah's spine. "But if you reject your destiny," she left the threat hanging in the air, the weight of it suffocating. The trees around them rustled as if responding to the brewing tension. Shadows danced, merging with their fears. Sarah felt the chains of dread tightening around her heart, squeezing out hope. She could almost hear the whispers, a cacophony of doubts and accusations. "You don't deserve freedom. You will perish alone. Join us." "No. You're wrong." The words burst from her lips as she clenched her fists. Struggling against the pull toward despair, she searched for clarity. "I want to let you use me. But as she screamed, the ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse, the stone glistening wickedly like a hungry eye. The laughter returned, an all-encompassing sound that seemed to reverberate against her mind. She felt it wrap around her like a snake, constricting her thoughts. "Every choice has a cost, Sarah," her uncle murmured, his voice smooth as silk. "You'll either choose to accept the truth or face the chasm." In that moment, she felt herself teetering on the edge of both fear and resolve. The figures closing in on her suddenly felt more like daggers than family. The shadows shifted and writhed, groaning as they beckoned her to submit. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, Sarah turned and ran. The roots balled up at her feet, trying to hold her back, but she wasn't ready to give in. Not yet. As she dashed away, the cacophony of whispers intensified, a symphony of threats and promises, beckoning her back to the evil that consumed her past. The trees reached out with twisted branches, but she dodged and rolled, heart pounding in her chest. Sarah no longer thought about the path, she followed her instincts, her feet pounding rhythmically against the ground, echoing her resolve to escape. But with every step, the whisper of the forest grew louder, drowning her in its demands, calling her home, wrapping its fingers around her throat once more. "If you run, you will find the truth or the chasm will take you." Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath her, plummeting into darkness. She gasped as she fell, terror overtaking her senses. Would she land in the chasm, or would she find the answer she sought? And as the void pulled her down, she heard one final echo of laughter, chilling and broken. What lay at the bottom? Would she find freedom or face the darkness that awaited her? Her mind raced with thoughts, but she knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back now. The fall seemed endless. Sarah flailed her arms, desperate to grasp something, anything that could break her descent. Darkness enveloped her, thick and suffocating. She could feel the weight of her fear pulling her down deeper, dragging her into a void where light and hope could not follow. Then, with a jarring thud, she hit something solid. Pain shot through her side, but it was accompanied by an awakening, a renewed dread that twisted in her stomach as she lay there, breathless and disoriented. The air was stale, not like the fresh scent of the forest above, but filled with a musty odor that spoke of long-lost secrets. With a shaky push, Sarah got onto her feet, her heart racing like a drum. She was in a cavern, walls slick with moisture and the atmosphere thick with an unnatural chill. Shadows hugged the corners, and the echoes of her uncle's laughter still whispered in her ears, mingling with the unsettling sounds of dripping water and rustling unseen creatures. Then she noticed them. Figures danced in her peripheral vision. They were blurred, ghostly apparitions that flickered in and out of sight. Each distortion carried a voice, distant yet piercing, with a sorrowful edge. "Come back, you must return, accept the truth, stop it." Sarah cried out, her voice breaking against the cacophony. "Leave me alone." She turned, squinting into the darkness, searching for the source of these voices, but finding only more shadows. Forcing her legs to move, she stumbled deeper into the cavern, every instinct screaming to turn back. The walls narrowed, and she ducked her head as the ceiling dipped, the air surrounding her growing heavier with every step. She could hear her heart pounding, a war drum beating against the silence. As she pressed forward, her foot slipped on a slick stone, and she crashed into a hidden wall. A low growl resonated from within the depths of the rock, and she froze. Shivers coursed through her as she traced her fingers over a strange symbol etched into the stone, a spiral that seemed to pulse beneath her touch, alive but warning. The growl grew louder, echoing ominously. Panic erupted in her chest. "What is this place?" she whispered, dread pooling in her gut. All her fears from moments before surged back, coiling around her like the very shadows that surrounded her. Then the whispers changed, turning from a chorus of sorrow to a frantic plea. "The path must be trodden, the blood must be spilled, only then will you see." Sarah recoiled, realizing they were not just voices, they were echoing her own truths, her own failures, reeking of her darkest secrets. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the words bled into her thoughts. Choices she had made, dreams she had buried, the weight of betrayal over her family's past suffocated her. Suddenly, the cavern itself seemed to shift. The ground quaked and the shadows converged, swirling toward her as if summoned by her fears. She had to escape. Run, Sarah. A fierce voice inside her screamed. She bolted, ducking beneath low-hanging rocks, her heart racing against the thundering echoes. The whispers reached a fever pitch, becoming a chaotic roar demanding her submission. Branching tunnels appeared around her, each path a potential escape or an inescapable trap. With no time to hesitate, she took a left, praying it would lead her out. She ran faster, her breaths harsh and frantic, racing against whatever darkness was chasing her, a creeping terror lurking just behind. The laughter echoed again, now layered with menacing intent, cutting through her resolve. Just then, in desperation, she skidded to a halt at a fork in the tunnel, panting heavily. She stood in a fragile silence, poised between choices that could mean freedom or her doom. Above her, a singular beam of light shone down from an opening she hadn't noticed before, casting eerie shadows that began to shape into figures with sharp grins. The cavern rumbled, and she felt a pull, a dark force dragging her closer to the light and whatever lay beyond. Choose, Sarah. The voices yelled in unison, a chilling chorus resonating around her. What waited for her in the light? Was it salvation or the ultimate betrayal? As the shadows clawed closer, Sarah knew that time was no longer an ally. Determined, she took a breath and stepped toward the truth or the nightmare that awaited her at the end of it. But did she have the strength to face what came next? The light was blinding. Sarah squinted, shielding her eyes. It felt warm, a sharp contrast to the cold tendrils of shadow that grasped at her heels. Her heart pounded, caught between fear and a fragile hope. What lay in that beam? Could it possibly offer a way out, away from the whispers and the darkness? As she stepped forward, the echoes quietened, giving way to a suffocating silence. The air shimmered, and she felt the chill dissipate slightly, replaced by an unsettling warmth that coiled around her like a serpent. Step into the light, the voices murmured, almost coaxing. You will find what you seek, but what would that mean? Yearning for answers battled with desperation. What truth awaited her beyond that threshold? Taking another shaky step, she lost her footing, stumbling forward, plunging into the glow. For an instant it was as if she had crossed into another world. The colors vibrated with intensity, greens and golds that shouldn't exist in the dark confines of a cave. Then it vanished. She landed in an open space, sprawled on the cold ground, feeling the sharp gravel digging into her skin. Disoriented, she pushed herself up and stared around. It was a clearing, surrounded by towering trees that loomed like guardians. The light that had enveloped her was gone, replaced by a dense gloom. A chill ran down her spine as she peered into the shadows beyond. Silence thickened, draping over her like a suffocating blanket. And then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Deep, ragged, and close. She turned to see a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, partially hidden behind a tree, watching her. It was shrouded in darkness, but two eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity. They were unblinking, filled with a hunger that froze her blood. Who are you? She croaked, her voice trembling. The eyes narrowed. You shouldn't have come here. The voice slithered out, smooth yet chilling, as if it carried the weight of countless sins. I just want to leave, Sarah gasped, stepping back instinctively, the dark figure seeming to grow denser, more threatening. Please. I can't let you do that, it said, stepping forward, a grotesque shape emerging from the shadows. The outline was human, but twisted, the edges blurred like a nightmare barely held together. The air turned electric, buzzing with an imminent threat. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to run, but the very ground beneath her felt like a trap, pulsing with an energy that bound her in place. Suddenly, she remembered the symbols on the cavern wall, the spiral that pulsed, alive, and warning. She could sense it now, they were connected. The darkness here was fierce and unyielding, but could it be fought? Could she redeem herself from this, whatever it was that waited, lurking just beyond her perception? Do you want to find the truth? The figure asked, its voice turning into a hiss. the truth your uncle buried deep in the dark. Her blood turned to ice. My uncle? Yes. You are part of a story far older than you know. Secrets held here, haunting this place. Before she could process what it meant, the darkness surged. Figures emerged from the shadows beside the lurking entity, all whispering her name, their voices a cacophony of torment, drawing in tighter, threatening to swallow her whole. Choose, Sarah, they echoed, reminding her again of the choices she had faced. You can either embrace the truth or become one with the shadows. Heart racing, she glanced back at the looming threat and then out toward the trees, desperately searching for any way to escape. But the forest was thick, tangled, like a labyrinth where hope vanished. Just as the figure took a step forward, its presence overwhelming, Sarah's breath hitched. Something glimmered in the shadows near her foot. A hidden tool or weapon. Without thinking, she lunged for it, adrenaline surging. The voices screamed louder, drowning out her thoughts, pleading for her to submit. But she would not give in. Not now. As she grasped the object, she could feel power within it. Was it her last chance at freedom? The moment expanded, frozen in fear. Would the truth liberate her, or would it lead her deeper into the abyss? And then she felt it, a rush of wind, steady and relentless. The dark entities shrank back, their eyes burning with rage. Uncover more than you intend, and you might find nothing of yourself left. With that foreboding warning echoing in her ears, Sarah braced herself. This fight was just beginning, and the very air crackled with uncertainty. What would evade her next? What truth was she truly after? All she knew was the ground trembled beneath her feet, and something sinister awaited those whispers, extending, eager to claim a soul. As she stood, the choice ahead loomed ever larger, swallowing her whole as she prepared to confront the shadows. What were they hiding, and would she dare to find out? The object Sarah grasped felt cool, almost metallic. Cold dread settled deep in her stomach as she stared at the dark figure that now stood barely feet away from her. The whispers intensified, enveloping her like an inescapable fog, urging her to drop what she held, to submit to the shadows. She didn't know what this thing was, but its presence was suffocating. The eyes, those burning, insatiable eyes, seemed to pierce through her defenses. You think that you can fight me? The figure hissed, a mocking tone slithering beneath its words, sending shivers spiraling down Sarah's spine. Leave me alone. Sarah shouted, gripping the object tighter. It felt like hope was radiating from whatever it was, a promise of something greater than the oppressive terror surrounding her. A flash of silver caught her peripheral vision, and she quickly raised the object, the handle of a dagger, gleaming ominously. For a moment, the shadows faltered, recoiling as if startled by light. The air shifted. Power surged in her veins, an exhilarating warmth replacing the dread. You don't control me, she called out, brandishing the dagger. Her voice sounded foreign, strong. I want the truth. The figure snarled, a bestial sound that made the veins in her neck tighten. The truth? It laughed, a high-pitched, chilling sound. You tread on sacred ground. What you seek is too dangerous for your kind. Sarah took a breath, trying to calm the frantic beating of her heart, willing her legs to move. The dark embodiment was not just a monster, it was a collector of secrets, of souls lost in these haunted woods. She had to believe that she could escape, that she could vanquish this force. The figure moved again, darting like a shadow, attempting to close the distance. But she swung the dagger toward it, the blade slicing through the air with a hiss. Stay back. She screamed, and for an instant, the darkness hesitated. In that heartbeat of uncertainty, the whispers grew frantic. Embrace the darkness, Sarah. They screeched. Embrace what your uncle failed to control. Shadows surged, swirling in an eddy around her, pulling her down into despair. Enough. She pushed forward through the thickening shadow, striding toward the figure looming before her, face twisted in anger and disdain. I will not be your pawn. With every ounce of courage, she lunged, aiming for the heart of the darkness. The dagger struck true, a flash of silver against the pitch blackness. Silence fell, a destructive quiet that felt almost comfortable. But then the figure began to dissolve, revealing a joyous howl of laughter, cascading through the clearing. Then the shadows reformed, twisting and turning like a massive serpent. "You dare fight me? You have no understanding of what you awaken." It spat, now appearing like a dark cloud that absorbed every breath of light around it. Fear gripped her again, icy fingers wrapping around her throat as terror flooded her senses. But she couldn't back down. "What are you?" Sarah demanded, her voice barely above a whisper but tinged with defiance. "I am what remains of your uncle's sins," it hissed. "His buried truths, they reside here, just beyond this veil. Untangling them, child, will mean your end." Sarah's resolve wavered. "Then I'll embrace it. I want to know." The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just her uncle's secret or the darkness, this was her own fight. It continued to morph, shifting into countless faces observing her, judging her. She caught glimpses of terror in their eyes, recognizing shadows from the past that lived in every memory she tried to forget. "Foolish girl," the figure whispered, each word laced with darkness. "You will uncover more than you ever wished." In that moment, her dagger pulsed violently, balancing between light and shadow, illuminated with an ancient glow that threatened to burn through the night. Just as she summoned every ounce of strength, a violent tremor shook the ground. The clearing shifted, forest roots groaning under an unseen pressure, a force designed to protect its secrets. The world around her rippled, and she felt herself being pulled in two directions. One tethered to the crumbling site of terror, the other wrapped in a promise of discovery. "Make your choice, Sarah," the shadow called, its voice now echoing with a multitude of tones. "What truth do you dare to claim?" In a last flicker of defiance, Sarah's grip tightened around the dagger. The air crackled with tension, and she prepared to leap into the unknown. The choice felt heavy, like a weight pressed against her chest. Would she risk everything to unearth her uncle's sins, or would she give in to the whispers that promised her safety in the dark? The dagger hummed with power, awakening something deep within, and she felt the old memories pushing to the surface like a tide. As the shadows twisted and closed in, the hairs on the back of her neck stood erect. What have you become, if not what you face? And with that chilling question hanging in the air, Sarah's heart raced as she braced for the consequences of her choice. What lay ahead could either liberate her or leave her entwined forever within the shadows of the past. Sarah stood in the clearing, bathed in darkness, yet something fierce flickered in her eyes. The dagger pulsed with raw energy, mirroring the storm of emotions that raged within. The shadows twisted and turned, taunting her, but she refused to flinch under their gaze. Nothing felt more terrifying than the looming presence before her. The cloaked figure morphed, shifting from face to face, carrying the weight of secrets long buried. Her thoughts rushed back to the stories, the whispers of lost souls, the routes taken before her, and the consequences of every choice. "What truth do you dare to claim?" The figure hissed, its voice an unsettling melody of those she had known. Memories surged, her cousin's laughter, the warnings from childhood tales, her uncle's creepy smiles. It was all here, woven into the fabric of the forest, ready to ensnare her. Taking a deep breath, she tightened her grip on the dagger, feeling its cool metal. "I choose to uncover it," she declared, her voice steady. "The truth will not consume me." The forest echoed her words, trembling with an unseen force. The darkness swirled, a tempest of confusion and malice, but the ancestral weight of family drew her closer. Lifting the dagger high, she plunged it into the ground, its sharp edge embedding into the rich earth. In that instant, a shockwave rippled through the clearing. Light burst forth from the dagger, expanding like the dawn breaking through clouds. The figure screamed, a sound of pure agony mixing with relief. Shadows recoiled, twisting back into the edges of the clearing as if afraid of the dawning light. Sarah could feel the air crackling with energy, purging the dread that had haunted her for so long. "Unraveling the past reveals the cost," the figure howled, dissolving into the wind, its voice fading. Sarah felt an echo deep within, a floodgate bursting open as forgotten memories collided. She felt her uncle's fear, the weight of his sins, the curse of the rules that bound their family to this cursed land. The laughter from before twisted into cries of help, voices yearning to escape. "You can't hold me now," she shouted, a fierce joy igniting within. She staggered slightly, her pulse racing as the emotions surged through her veins, infrastructure of old anguish shifting beneath her. The whispers of the lost grew louder, intertwining with hers until they formed a symphony, secrets begging to be known amid a cacophony of sorrow. A warm light enveloped Sarah as she stepped forward into the gathering brilliance. Visions swirled around her, ancestral faces lit up with hope, once lost in shadows now shone in soft luminescence. "I will not be your vessel, but I will honor those who suffered." With every repeated affirmation, she felt herself getting lighter, shedding the weight of the cabin's curse. The shadows dissipated, retreating into the quiet of the woods, abandoning their promise of power. And then came silence, profound and liberating. The ancient tree creaked, as if acknowledging her claim of freedom. Its twisted branches, once a prison, began to unfurl into vibrant leaves, blooming with colors previously unseen. The laughter, those lost and haunting echoes, turned into a gentle melody, harmonizing in triumph. In that moment, Sarah felt full, empowered, and light. She turned, knowing she had faced true darkness, and walked out with light instead. The fear had been fierce but now felt infused with strength. With a final glance at the ever-shifting trees behind her, she stepped forward. Determined to find her way back to the cabin and to reclaim the heart of her family's legacy, not through fear, but acceptance. She had seen what lay within the shadows, and there was no going back to ignorance. "Now the truth shall guide me home," she whispered, breaking into a stride that seemed to resonate with the very essence of the land. Each step lighter than the last, she reveled in the awakening of her spirit, ready to join the world beyond the cursed woods, liberated from the burden of shadows. And as all the trees whispered her name in gratitude, Sarah knew that she was finally free. You need to subscribe now to catch every exclusive story we share. Smash that like button now to help us feed the algorithm and keep the adventure going. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. You can't hold back. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this explosive conclusion. Your support matters more than you realize.